If you're just joining us, karibu tena sana. We are having a conversation this particular hour about elections in African countries and, of course, strengthening democracy. This is Radio Generation. Catch us across all social media channels at Radio Gen KE. Nairobi, it's 88.8 FM. Mombasa, it's 90.7. Our first guest this particular hour is Dismas Mokua. He's a political risk analyst. And, of course, Siti Muga kwa kwa studio na mimi. Tutaongelea kidogo kuhusu Tanzania as we talk about the larger African continent. So, Dismas, welcome to Radio Generation once again.
Thank you very much. I'm very delighted to be here.
Yes, indeed. It's a pleasure hosting you once again. Let's talk about what we are witnessing in Tanzania. They are saying that Kenyans are involved in their unrest. What are your thoughts on this Kenyan issue and us attacking Tanzania or helping them attack the government?
Well, I think the levels of political literacy in Kenya are extremely high. And that is very impressive. And Kenyans tend to participate in any election all over the world. If there is an election in the US, Kenyans have got a view. If there is an election in Uganda, Kenyans have got a view. So Kenyans have got a view about elections all over the world, which in my view is a very good thing. And in part has been created by the 2010 Constitution, which allows people to express their political views, which allows for so many civil liberties. But the probability that Kenyans are physically in Tanzania and participating in acts which contradict the Tanzanian constitution, in my view, the probability is almost zero. Of course, you had a couple of young guys along the border in Sirare who wanted to move across the border and go engage in demonstrations. But I don't think that act would be material in influencing the electoral outcomes. So probability of that Kenyans have gone to Mbeya, Morogoro and participating in the electoral process is almost zero. However, that they've been very active on social media, it's a fact. There maybe the conversation would be whether or not the content on social media is actually accurate or it's misinformation or disinformation.
I was actually telling Siti in the first hour about this situation and I said, perhaps maybe. Is it possible, actually, let me ask you this. Is it possible that some Kenyans were ferried either by Tanzanian politicians, Tanzanian businessmen, or even Kenyan politician or Kenyan businessmen, and they said, guys, let's go and create some havoc in Tanzania for whatever reason? I do not know what their end goal would be. But is it possible that there could be a group of Kenyans, let me even call them experts, hired to go and even lead demonstrations in Tanzania? Because I was looking at some photos that came out during the election day, and you could see you could see protesters rather receiving tear gas and throwing it back to the police, something we have only witnessed here in the 254.
One of the things that the security agencies in Kenya attempted to implement in Kenya is called Nyumba Kumi. So that at the lowest level, you know exactly what is happening. And Nyumba Kumi is a huge success in Tanzania. So again, the probability that you can have 10 Kenyans.
I told him the same thing.
The probability that you can have 10 Kenyans going to Tanzania and engaging in things which are contrary to their constitution is almost zero. And then Tanzania has got very solid security infrastructure. Starting with what they refer to as Jeshi la Polisi, their police service or police force, the intelligence system, their military, they are very, very solid. So they would pick a foreigner, even by just looking at you and your accent, they will tell that, you're speaking your Kiswahili, but
Tanzania.
So that probability that does not exist. And then also, the other item is, the people who may move to those places are the ones who share the border. Like, for instance, maybe you have laws in Kenya, laws in Tanzania, you have Maasais, you have all those people.
You have couriers.
Yeah, couriers. But still their accents. Because a Maasai man in Kenya and a Maasai man in Tanzania, they would speak Swahili. And you would tell, even if you don't understand the language. For instance, Lowassa, I understand he was a Maasai man, the later Lowassa. But he speaks Swahili, and you take the governor for Kajiado, he's speaking Swahili, you would tell where they come from. So probability of Kenyans physically engaging in demonstrations in Tanzania, or indeed any other country in the world, probability is zero.
Okay, so no mercenaries were exported to TZ.
That would be the highest level of misinformation and disinformation. And then these mercenaries, where were they trained? And would they have the capacity of dealing with the Tanzania People's Defense Forces? Given the fact that Nyumba Kumi goes to the grassroots.
Yeah.
So as soon as you walk in, people will tell. I mean, there are people who've gone for meetings in Tanzania. You go a big delegation, maybe you're attending a meeting, maybe you're 20 in a hotel. And then a few moments later, the immigration folks will come and have a word with you. And they say they want to be sure that you are comfortable, you're enjoying your peace. But, you know, they want to check the situation. And it does exist, even here in Kenya, any foreigner coming to Kenya, provided you've got a passport.
Yeah.
All hotels in Kenya are required to indicate where you are going to. So it's something which has been applied globally, you know, in an attempt to fight terrorism and these
trafficking.
Yeah, all those kind of things. I mean, for instance, would you imagine that you'd have 100 people from a foreign country coming to Kenya during our elections, and causing chaos, and say they're putting up in say Hurlingham and Milimani, and the local security agencies have no idea? That will not happen.
Okay, so basically, so why then would the president of Tanzania, President Samia, say that she will deal with how jirani? And I know she wasn't talking about Ugandans.
But why do you think that when she says jirani, she means Kenya?
Maybe she was.
Are you guilty?
No.
We have been guilty in the past. Guilty simply because certain Kenyans who are prominent in their charge against what they consider to be unfair practices on the citizenry of Kenya have visited Tanzania. They were allowed to be in Tanzania. That's why they were there. They could have been stopped at the border because there are people who are known. Some of them got injured. Some of them were treated badly, but they came back to Kenya. That one incident. Now, the reference to a neighbor, okay, who are Tanzania's neighbors? Count DRC, Uganda.
There's Rwanda,
further south.
There's Burundi, there's so many neighbors. There wouldn't even be neighbors coming from the Indian Ocean. But really, I think when there's a mention of jirani, I think on the extreme side where Kenya has participated in the electoral process is by sending observers, maybe who are members of EALA or members of these international bodies, as well as online. And unfortunately, majority of the conversations or comments around Tanzania, in fact, it's been there's been lots of misinformation and disinformation. But however, again, when you look at the charter establishing the East African community, the raison d'etre or the foundation is around peace and stability for economic development. So it's not every Kenyan is expected to have insurable interest in what is happening around the East African community, because we are a common. I mean, we are now with all those units of integration. We even have a common passport, the blue passport, which East African community. So there's nothing wrong in Kenyans having interest in what is happening in Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, DRC, Somali, and South Sudan. Any member of the East African states. And in any event, you know, the administration said that if you're an African, you come to Kenya without any visa requirements, so you just check in. So for me, I think it's only fair for Kenyans to have that very superior understanding of what is happening in the region. Not just because of this East African charter, but because also for intercultural competence. Because, you know, Kenyans have been accused that when you go to Tanzania, the way, say, if you're in a bar or a restaurant, the way you order for a drink, you do it as if you are in Nairobi. Madam, but you see,
kuna utaratibu.
Kuna utaratibu. There's a procedure. Or you go to maybe our neighboring countries and you want to start asking questions. You know, some questions can put you behind bars in our neighboring countries. So it means even as Kenyans relate with Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, we must understand the cultural expectations and how to manage expectations.
Do we understand those things?
Majority of Kenyans do not understand, and that is why Kenya sometimes we get a beating the way we behave. Like, for instance, when people are saying that the folks on Kenyan social media, they want to go and liberate Tanzania, and then when they're done with Tanzania, they're going to other countries.
They'll go to Uganda.
I mean, what does that mean? Because you see, before you plan to visit any country, you must understand the local nuances, even the local languages. Like, for instance, the usage of maandamano in Kenya, well, it's a Kiswahili word, and maandamano in Tanzania, Those are two different meanings. Because maandamano in Kenya means a protest,
yeah.
or a demonstration, but maandamano in Tanzania means a procession.
Yeah.
Or even kuchochea. You know, kuchochea in Kenya means a bad thing, but in Tanzania, I mean the Tanzanian Kiswahili, kuchochea is actually a good thing. Or even I've seen a number of our people going to, I'm being very careful with this cultural competence not to name names, but you see Kenyan men going to other countries where they are tall, dark, beautiful ladies, and they engage in relationship, not knowing that if you're a married man in Kenya, you go to the neighboring country and have an affair with a lady, you make her believe that you are single while in fact you are married. It's a criminal offense. You'll find yourself being deported. So with Google or other applications, if you're planning to go and visit Rwanda or Burundi or Tanzania, understand the local expectations, the local nuances. Even in Kenya, when people wakimaliza mkutano jioni wanasema tupigane, it doesn't mean that they are going to call you. They're just telling you that meeting imeisha. It was nice doing business. So for a foreigner who comes to Kenya at the end of the meeting tupigane, the following day they may actually expect a call, and the call doesn't come through. Another kulizana. So
you said you called.
You said you what happened? Yeah. So for me, I think it's important for us to understand those things, and not just for the East African. Globally. Like initially, you're having conversations about. Latin America, what happens to Latin America. If you're going to a country where there are drug laws and all those kind of things, you need to know that who is king in this part of the world. Because ukienda kifua mbele, then your kifua may stop a bullet.
Yeah. True. There are actually some places in the States, specific cities where you wear red, you belong to a rival gang, and you can be shot without question. You wear blue, you could be shot because you're in a red zone. Or you wear red in a blue zone, it's a problem. So yeah.
And also that becomes very dangerous because most African countries get second-hand clothes from this part of the world.
Yeah. So
you may buy a nice T-shirt, a nice shirt with some logo, with something.
A gang sign.
Yeah, and you have no idea. In fact, I'm reminded of at some stage a gentleman bought a nice jacket, but it was a uniform for a funeral home in the UK. But it was a nice jacket, top of the range, high quality.
Yes.
But he wore it. He was very proud with the jacket. But little did he know that it was the elite funeral of that country.
Okay.
But for him it was official wear. Yeah. So it's important to understand those dynamics.
Okay. Okay, that's funny, but also not funny. So when the president of Tanzania says what she said, so and our country, our government so far. I've not heard anything. Maybe they've put up a statement between that time and now, but I haven't heard anything from our government. And the government has been very silent on other issues as well. For example, we have Oyo and Njagi missing in Uganda. They haven't said anything about it. Why do you think does it mean that they're probably working behind the scenes, or they just don't care?
Well, in my understanding, Kenya's High Commissioner to Uganda, Mr. Joash Mangi, I saw that he met with a senior minister of rank in Uganda, addressing the issue of the two Kenyans who are said to be in Uganda. And I also saw that the PS for Foreign Affairs, Korir Sing'oei, saying that the matter is being sorted out, a position which was embraced by PC Musalia Mudavadi, that the issue is actually being addressed at a state-to-state level, and that the issue is being addressed. And my understanding of diplomatic communications, if a state does not address another state directly, or if the persons are not mentioned adversely, then in my view, it may be imprudent for the Kenyan state to respond to a statement made by another head of state, which is not directed to Kenya.
Okay.
Because if you're talking about Jirani, and Tanzania has got, I don't know,
Jirani kadha.
Yeah, 10 Jiranis, then it means that every head of state is going to respond to that, starting from Kenya, Uganda,
DRC.
Rwanda, Burundi, then you have Zambia, then you have Mozambique. All of them are responding. So, for me, in my view is that if at any stage the lives and properties of Kenyans in Tanzania, or indeed in any other parts of the world are affected, that is when the state should respond. But if the statement has not been directed to the authorities,
Yes.
then for me, there's no need even to start responding, because then it would mean the guilty are always running. But however, if you have Kenyans in Tanzania who feel like maybe because of those statements, then they're going to be uncomfortable, then it may be useful for them to go to the Kenyan High Commission, or visit the High Commissioner in Tanzania and register their interest. But in any event, we are tied. I mean, the bonds are so strong that even such kind of statements will not make people to be worried. I mean, I think our border is about 956 kilometers with Tanzania. So that is very long. So I doubt whether those statements are directed at Kenya, or indeed they'll affect Kenyans' interests. But in the unlikely event that they do, then you've got the High Commissioners to deal with that.
So let me just read again what President Samia said. Sikushtuka kuona kuna watu waliotoka nchi jirani na kuanza vita humu nchini mwetu. Nitawatafuta kila mmoja wenu na mtajua mimi ndiye amiri jeshi kuu na simba jike. So basically she's the lioness and the chief of wanatoka CIC, Commander in Chief, yes. And then there's a Kenyan researcher in Tanzania, alisema hivi: soldiers stopped us, searched the vehicles and again asked about our stay in Tanzania, which is not unusual. Most of us still had valid 30-day permits, but they claimed foreigners should only stay for a week. They made us sleep on the tarmac, cocked their guns and pointed them at some of us. It was terrifying. So these are Kenyans. Maybe other Ugandans will come out and speak. People from DRC also will say something about that. I don't know. But from the news stories we are watching also on TV and on YouTube, it looks like Kenyans are the ones being targeted in this situation.
Why do you say Kenyans are being targeted?
Because they are the ones speaking out. I have not seen
it's a Kenyan newspaper.
I have not seen a yeah, I mean, if they had written about it, Ugandan here would read about it, but they haven't.
Maybe it's in the Ugandan
monitor. The word that I am actually asking about is the word targeted. Because when you say targeted, it means that anybody who's a Kenyan in that country, in essence, is in danger.
Is a target.
Yes.
Let me read that again by this Kenyan researcher. Soldiers stopped us, searched the vehicles, so there were multiple vehicles here, and again asked about our stay in Tanzania. Most of us still had valid 30-day permits, but they claimed foreigners, so they didn't necessarily say Kenyans, should only stay for a week. They made us sleep on the tarmac, cocked their guns, and pointed them at some of us. It was terrifying. Again, I make reference to some of the news items I've watched last night, and videos also coming from Kenyans who are either at the border points or who are already in Tanzania, saying something similar, that they were either stopped or officers came to their location, whether it's their business premise or their homes.
Well, if the Tanzania authorities are doing a search and they come across foreigners, and they ask the foreigners to identify themselves and indicate the purpose of their mission in Tanzania, for me I see nothing wrong, because the president has given orders, and she suspects that there would be mischievous elements. So if there's any Kenyan who breaks laws in Kenya, obviously will be subject to the rule of law and order. And the same happens in our neighboring country. If you go to a neighboring country and you break the local rules and regulations, you assault their constitution, then you should not be surprised that you're going to face the rule of law and order. However, it would be unacceptable if, to use your words, that Kenyans are being targeted simply because they are Kenyans. Then that would be against EAC, and then one would expect that the Kenyan authorities would take up the position. But I would imagine the obtaining situation in Tanzania today is that if you're said to be a foreigner, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, then the local security agencies would be interested in establishing your interest in Tanzania at that point in time. But if you've got everything is solid, I don't think there's any cause for alarm. And then, as I'm saying, some of the stories which are coming from Tanzania, especially around the targeting of foreigners, could be exaggerated, because some Kenyans have got a way of telling stories and yanaongeza chumvi kidogo. But my view would be, before you travel to any country, understand the local nuances, have your passport ready or any other identification paper, and make sure that you're on the right side of the law always. Because if you break the laws in Kenya, you'll be in trouble. If you do it in Tanzania, you'll be in trouble.
True. Anyway, in all fairness, we also had a situation whereby there was a Ugandan who was arrested together with Boniface Mwangi at that time that they had that problem. I can't remember her name. So let's just hope that this is one of those situations whereby people who have actually caused chaos or mayhem are the ones who will be, arrested and face the law.
That's not how it works out. That dragnet will catch very many people.
Innocent as well.
Yes, there are people who have been in Tanzania for a long time, probably not documented, not necessarily from Kenya. Remember, Tanzania is bordered by Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique, the DRC. The DRC is not a place where a peaceful haven. I'm saying that Burundi, Rwanda, any country that experiences what Tanzania has experienced for the first time, it is a shock. They've never seen this. Now, Kenyans will look at things from a Kenyan lens. And our Kenyan lens, if you apply it to other countries in East Africa, we are considered some of the rudest people you can ever come across. The way we speak, the way we judge people, our utterances. When we're talking among ourselves, we understand and it is fine. When you export it, it is not acceptable. Now, if you did not anticipate, okay, let me roll this back. The Kenyan lens that we have, when you talk of a president of a country, of an election, we look at how we conduct our elections and the people who vie and everything that goes along with it. All right? Tanzania is not like us at all. Tanzania have the equivalent of KANU that has been ruling from the time of independence. It wasn't always CCM. There was the equivalent of KANU called Tanganyika National TANU
and
Afro-Shirazi Party
from
that
Zanzibar
came together to form CCM. Okay? Now, since then, they have been, it was more or less built along the same lines as what you see the Chinese Communist Party. Same lines. So the president is the face of the party now. But the party organs are as strong as the party organs that you see in any party in, say, South Africa, with the representative system that they have there. So when you have a presidential election, this is the person whom CCM have put up. And they don't cobble up parties with every election like we do here, where you have this outfit plus the other. Now, when they go for an election, again, Kenyan elections, nobody wins with a landslide. Nobody. The closest we got to it was Kibaki with 60-something percent.
Yeah. And that was a rare occurrence.
It is so rare we even marvel at it. Okay? Because it has never happened. Us, it is percentages that make you wonder whether somebody actually won. That is a Kenyan experience.
Actually, let me buttress what City Muga is saying. When you are talking about CCM, then you talk about ANC, and then you bring in KANU before we go before 1992. Now, about CCM is very rich as a political party, very rich.
Financially.
Yeah, financially. I mean, they've got resources. Then they are all over Tanzania. In every single village.
Yes.
They're all over. Then the leadership of CCM is acknowledged at every function. Wherever the president is attending a function, they'll introduce everybody, waseme viongozi wa vyombo vya ulinzi na usalama na viongozi wa chama tawala CCM. Now, the CCM leadership at the district and provincial levels have got a very close connection with the security agencies, because they say that the ones who are supposed to implement the EALA, I think the party manifesto.
Okay.
So wherever there are public servants of rank discharging their mandate or services, CCM is close by. CCM is watching. That is why the leadership of CCM in Tanzania is so strong. In fact, it's a craving for anybody to be. You'd rather be a leader of CCM than even become an MP, because CCM gives you a lot of power. That is number one.
Yeah.
Therefore, it means that with CCM, the other political parties are not as strong, like Chadema, AC2, Zalend, all those other political parties. They're not very strong.
Yeah.
And they cannot compete with CCM. First of all, the political parties have got challenges with their strategic planning. They cannot raise resources. And then number two, the opposition parties within Tanzania, they don't have strong opposition leaders in the level of, say, the late Mr. Raila Odinga or Mr. Rigathi Gachagua now, or Mr. Kalonzo Musyoka, or Fred Matiang'i, they don't have strong opposition leaders.
Let's begin the sensitive. Martha Karua, please.
And Martha Karua,
Thank you so
and
much.
Charity Ngilu.
Thank you. Yeah, like
Charity
that.
Ngilu.
Yes.
Yeah. And I heard you mention that there's going to be a leadership change in Kitui. So we can also mention, you did not mention Enoch Wambua, so there's also Enoch Wambua.
Right.
I don't know why you mentioned Makali Mulu only.
It's because we hosted him yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they don't have strong opposition leaders. There's nobody in Tanzania like Mr. Raila Odinga used to declare public holiday in Kenya. Who can declare public holiday in Tanzania?
Yeah.
So when you put all those factors together, it buttresses what Siti Muga is talking about over CCM becoming very powerful. However, with the advent of multi-party politics in 1995, and also in other parts of Africa, those independence era political parties are increasingly becoming weak by the day. For instance, who knew that ANC in South Africa would keep on losing popularity till now they have to form they've got an equivalent of Nusumkate with DA, a party that the leadership of both ANC and DA said never ever are we going to sit in a round table and have a conversation.
Now they are,
because moja inaangalia Kisumu na ingine Mombasa. Even on issues of the Middle East, the DA and ANC, they don't have a common position. But because ANC has had challenges, now they have to say, for the sake of our national unity, let's have this kind of arrangement. Yes, some sort of broad-based. So you see that those are challenges. Now the same now is beginning to happen with CCM. And I suspect there's a phobia within CCM that if they're not careful, they're going to follow the path of ANC or even the path of KANU. You remember with the Moi leaving office, KANU is no longer. You remember at some stage KANU used to own everything. They even owned KICC. Yeah. So can you imagine the amount of wealth that a CCM has got? If they've been running the nation from even before independence, although the parties have rebranded, so they've got that kind of a thing. And in my view, for us to make progress, and speaking as a proud member of the East African community, now President Suluhu Hassan has got a unique opportunity to midwife Tanzania to the next level. And in my view, she needs to do three things. Number one, create an environment for internal party democracy within CCM and allow every member of CCM to come up with the views, divergent or otherwise, to make CCM so strong so that everybody within CCM feels that in fact their voices have been heard. That would be the first thing. Then the second thing would be to have a constitutional reform process, especially from the electoral side. For instance, the idea that after the presidential election, when the IBC called the INEC declares a winner, you cannot challenge that declaration in court. I mean, I think it's time for them to review that. So that even if your challenge in court is not valid or doesn't hold much water, but it's part of the healing process. Some people, when you lose an election and you take a petition to court, it's not because you stand a chance of winning, but it's through the healing process, so that you can even make your supporters and donors happy. That, guys, can't you see?
I tried.
I mean, kura yangu ilibiwa, but I went the entire mile, and the Supreme Court or the equivalent did not side with us. And so that would be the second thing. Then number three, they may also want to consider what Kenya has, supporting the political parties with resources. In Kenya, we've got the Political Parties Fund, where political parties are given a lot of resources for 5 years. There are several schools of thought on this that are, should taxpayers in fact be funding political parties, or political parties should get resources on their own? But I think there is merit, especially in the case of Tanzania, for taxpayers to support the political parties, so that you've got a divergent of opinion. I understand from the parliamentary election that CCM has got 270 positions, while the opposition has got 2 positions. Now that means that unless there is really proactive ideas cross-pollination within CCM, there'll be no divergent views, because everybody comes with the party line.
Basically, the eyes will have it all the time.
All the time, yeah. So you see, when you've got opposition, and a good assembly should be almost in the ratio of 1-to-1. You know, even a good presidential election should be the winner having about 51% and then the loser having about 48% with some ballots, a provision for spoiled ballots. So, you know, when you have that, then you've got a very thriving democracy. So that people can come out and express their views. And then finally, maybe the president may want to incorporate the ideas. And I listened to her speech when she was being sworn in. She said she's going to work with the other presidential candidates. I think there were about 16 people who ran against her.
17.
Yeah, never mind that they have nothing to write home. But she's going to pick ideas. So it may be a very good thing for her just to pick a variety of some of these people and maybe have them as part of her administration. Not because that she needs to, but for the healing process in Tanzania. Because you see, when your neighbor down the road has got challenges, then indirectly you have challenges. So I think that is what may work for TZ.
This 270 versus 2 that are in parliament, they were all elected, right?
Yes.
So it's not like ati they were handed this ninis. Kumaanisha wa Tanzania wenye walienda kwa kupiga kura, tuliambiwa ni about 99% who went and voted. Out of, so they decided to vote in 270 MPs. So clearly they wanted the ruling party to take charge of their parliament. Ni mali tu bro.
No.
So hii story ingine ya na vile umesema, unless within those 270 of them we have like seriously divergent opinions and views, then Tanzanians have decided that that is the kind of country and government they want.
They haven't. That's not the point. Bro, two main opposition leaders, forget being jailed, their parties were not allowed to even participate.
Well, you know, for
So
Chadema,
what do you set in motion there? You see, everything that you've said, I know you're being facetious. Not that I don't understand. I understand. I was just saying because I was thinking, if the main opposition, let me take a few steps back. The person who started Chadema was Lowassa. Lowassa had been a prime minister, okay, under Kikwete. Before then, when Tanzania helped invade Uganda to remove Idi Amin, he was in the army at that particular time. Lowassa had been in CCM from 1977. For 2 years he left from Chadema, but he went back to CCM. He was known. When he stood for the presidency, he got a good chunk. In fact, he was considered a serious threat. He got a very, very good chunk. It was around 36% of the votes. He went back to CCM. Okay? Chadema remained. Tundu Lissu got 13% of the votes when he stood. This jailing would not make Tundu Lissu less popular. It would make him more popular. Okay? Now, if you got 13% in the previous election, the likelihood of him getting more votes if he stood again was higher. Whenever a leader of the opposition is jailed, the public begins to ask questions that ordinarily they would not ask. What was the threat? Is there a likelihood that this person could have won? All these things happen. If we take our own example, Raila Odinga was jailed so many times, put in detention so many times. Now, how did it play out in the later years? A man loses an election clearly and becomes more popular. It's so contradictory. It's actually amazing. Now we have the situation we have in Tanzania. This situation is not going to be settled easily. And the reason why it's not going to be settled easily, the citizens have tasted something they've never tasted before.
Man.
Yes. They have never objected this strongly to anything within the country because the party has held many things very tightly. Something has broken. So you cannot go back to that old mold. Now let me bring in a perspective. One of the things about us third world poor countries is this. The people who more or less dictate to us and how we should behave, the people who give us money. Tanzania is mineral rich. These people are not going to allow Tanzania to get into chaos. it's not in their interest. When a president in the inauguration speech talks about bringing in other parties, you're talking the Kenyan language of coalition. You may not think so, but that's what you are doing. Tundu Lissu and friend will be released at some point. Discussions will be held. How Tanzania will go about their business is a different matter. But that transition, that process is going to be managed, and there'll be input from other people other than the Tanzanian leadership and CCM. That is the view I wanted to express.
And then also coupled with that, when you look at Chadema, Tundu Lissu, their leader, had said no reform, no election. But the leadership of Tanzania as well as the CCM said we are going to have an election. An election will take place. So whether or not Tundu Lissu had been arrested or not, is a political party had said they were not going to take part in election. And then the other political party which came in now was the ACT, which again doesn't have the gravitas. So really whether or not they were on board.
But Nikulize Ndugu, if they had no gravitas, then why jail them?
No, I'm talking about now ACT. Yeah, and I wanted to address the point you raised. That when you're going to participate in an election, it's not just on the material day. It's actually the 5 years before the elections, whether or not this political party has got resources to go through the country to do their campaigns, whether they can hold political rallies, whether they can hold meetings, whether they can have fundraisers, so that they can effectively participate in an election. And then there are also people, depending on the levels of literacy, who vote under duration. Under duress. For the longest time, people voted for KANU because it was Baba na Mama. And you are born knowing that the only party you're going to vote for is KANU. So it almost becomes a mechanical process that you have to vote for KANU. But in my view, for us to make progress, is the leadership in Tanzania now needs to embrace the thinking and identify with the aspirations of majority of people. And the biggest block would be CCM. It's the CCM leadership which needs to take the decision that it's time for them to catalyze, actually not catalyze, for them to influence the reforms, so that their constitution is sensitive to the needs, interests and aspirations of the entire nation. Because as City has indicated, people have now realized that in fact they can do demonstrations and their voices are going to be heard. So one senses that there is a latent fury. There's a part of the nation which is very furious, but they've bottled their fury. So to avoid a recurrence, then it may be prudent for the leadership to have an elaborate conversation and review the constitution. Like for instance, the 2010 constitution, first of all, it became because of amending section 2A. And then we had the 2010 constitution, which took a very big view and captured the interests and aspirations of all Kenyans. Like for instance, one of the key provisions, you may recall that President Kibaki was sworn in very late in the evening.
The night,
Yeah, but that incident, people said, wait a minute, Kenya, we are an anchor state in this part of the world. How do you swear in a president
at night
when you're supposed to be enjoying there used to be a program called Sundowner on KBC. So when you're supposed to be enjoying Sundowner, that is when the president is sworn in a hurry. It was like a Bolt moment. Usain Bolt, saw him in a hurry. Our Jiranis were not invited for the function, or even if they were invited, they couldn't make it. That is why now you have a very elaborate assumption of office acts. That a result is declared today. There's a period, if you want to file a petition, you do. The Supreme Court will pronounce itself, and then there's a provision when you're going to be sworn in, and it's very specific that you can only be sworn in public between
this time
hours.
and this time.
Yeah, in a public place between this time. It's very elaborate. There's even another one talking about the transfer of executive authority. What a principal secretary must do, what a cabinet secretary must do during that interim period. The same applies for governors. And these are some of the pieces of legislation which in my view I think they are best practices, not just in Kenya but all over the world. Even in the US, it's very clear. The election is held in November. But everybody knows the president is going to be sworn in sometime in January. So it's important.
January 20th.
And also for them, it's very elaborate. That it doesn't matter whether you've placed your hand, you've taken oath. When it's midday, automatically
you become president.
You become the president. So it's important to have such kind of elaborate arrangements so that you take care of all these issues to avoid people getting into trouble.
Yeah, and that's why perhaps you've said certain things that need to happen in Tanzania. But I'm focusing right now on Tundu Lissu. Do you think that if elections, for some strange reason, were to be held today again, let's say people say, you know what, let's get back to the ballot, do you think they would vote in President Samia again?
Now you're going to that territory of called unknown unknowns, but the probability of Samia Hassan winning the election, if it was held today, is extremely high.
I'll be more definitive. She would still win.
Yeah, because the structures haven't changed.
She would still win.
Yeah, CCM. Again, it's important to.
Oh, sorry. The part I didn't include is now Tundu Lissu is in the picture. Is on the ballot.
You see,
she would still win.
CCM, Chama cha Mapinduzi, is bigger than Tundu Lissu.
Any other, yeah.
It's bigger than Jakaya Kikwete, bigger than Mkapa, bigger than any leadership. So if you have elections today without any material changes to the electoral infrastructure, the probability of winning is extremely high.
Yeah.
The only time you may have a change in the margin is in is in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
That is, if they undergo through an elaborate reform, then there's a probability that there would be the margin would reduce. Obviously, it will reduce from 98 to a certain level, but still, one can easily bet that during the next election, the CCM candidate is going to win again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even after this drama we've seen.
Yes.
The margin of winning is what will reduce.
Yeah.
Over time. But a party based on the Chinese Communist Party structure, where the party permeates every aspect of society, you don't dislodge such a party easily.
Yeah.
What you do is you chip at it.
Pole pole.
Yes, and you are known. As I said, Lowassa was known. That man had been there for a long time, and he was a prime minister. So he's not just an ordinary citizen.
And wealthy.
And extremely wealthy. Got him into trouble, though, because he was the one. Yeah, it got him into trouble. He actually had to step down from his position as prime minister. There was some scandal that enveloped him. So, according to the laws in Tanzania, the then president, Jakaya Kikwete, had to reorganize his entire cabinet again and even to appoint a new prime minister.
Yeah.
Tundu Lissu may have gotten more votes in this election than he did in the previous one, but to win, no, he would not have won.
So then, why did President Samia go through all that? Anyway, that question we shall ask.
All presidents all over the world, incumbents, even if they know that they are going to win, and a politician has joined us.
Yeah.
When a politician knows very well is going to win, they have to cover every ground, because when they sit back at home, when they're having the shower, when they entertain the probability of losing an election, even when you know you are going to win, but you entertain the probability of a loss, they start having a running stomach, they start sweating, and they call their core team to come back to the table in the middle of the night and say, I know we are going to win. Lakini. But what happens if we lose? Is there the slightest, even if the probability of losing is zero, they'll go back and seal every part. And for President Suluhu Hassan, you'd understand where she comes from.
Yes.
Would you imagine if she lost an election, they say, the first female to lose an election, when she had been given the position essentially on a silver platter? Would you imagine the CCM rank and file, people who've been beneficiaries of this CCM for a long time, imagining that we may lose this election? So they go back and say, wait a minute, what else do we need to do? It's like those people who've got a phobia when say you're leaving home, you locked your door, you get to the car park, but unajuza,
kuna kitu nimesahau,
ile mlango kweli nilifunga,
nilizima pasi.
Then you go back and double check, and then when you're done, then unajiuliza, lakini na alarm niliweka on. So you keep on doing those things, not because you haven't done them, but because there's a certain phobia.
There's a doubt. All right, allow me to introduce Maina Karobia. He is an MP, East African Legislative Assembly. Mheshimiwa, karibu tena sana to Radio Generation.
Yes.
You just found us talking about the elections that happened in Tanzania, but most importantly, we started by talking about the statement here on the Standard, and I'll ask you about it, what you think of it. Apparently inasemekana that kuna jirani ambao wameenda kule Tanzania wakaleta shida. What do you think of the statements that were made by President Samia? Because she said, sikushtuka kuona kuna watu waliotoka nchi jirani na kuanza vita humu nchini mwetu. Nitawatafuta kila mmoja wenu na mtajua mimi ndiye amiri jeshi kuu na simba jike.
Thank you very much, my good friend Mbuvi and Muga, for inviting me here. I think the last time we met, both of you, was almost a year ago. I remember you hosted me in your respective assignments. But apologies for coming late. And I want to say, when we go to heaven, I'll be faster.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Let me give a disclaimer. I was the deputy head of mission for this election observation in Tanzania.
All right.
For the EAC observer mission. So the extent that I might not give my opinions because of that assignment that I had.
Fair enough.
But be as it may, the question that you have asked, I think Tanzania, from where I sit, they need to move on from the hangover of elections. They need to focus now on healing the nation and moving forward. They need to focus on the manifesto the ruling party gave to the people and upon which they were elected on, so that they are able to move the nation forward. I don't think there's need to look backwards at who was opposing who was doing what. I think it is more strategic for a leader, particularly with the kind of situations they have had the last 1 year in as far as this election is concerned. I think it would be best if they looked forward rather than looking backwards, because otherwise you will have issues internally and also externally. Because I've seen a certain senator in the Senate of US actually raising a concern that they might discuss their relations between the US and Tanzania. So for me, I think it is best if they moved forward, other than looking at the factors that involved the election. Because in any democracy or in any competition, there will always be varying interests. So, and sometimes the best thing is to move forward. I want to take it and take a positive lesson from how I see the Kenyan kind of politics. Sometimes we might say that, sijui, like the right honorable was doing a mistake to come and have a conversation or dialogues with the former presidents. But let me tell you, I think the Kenyan democracy is a very good example. That once you lose an election or once the competition is done, it's always good that leaders come together and you're able to forge forward. Don't look backwards because it was a competition. And in any case, all of you were competing to do the best for the country. You're not competing. None of you was competing to one do good and the other do bad. All of you are competing for the best interest. So I think it is in the best interest of Tanzania if the administration there looks forward and even looks at how they can bring other alternative voices to the table. Otherwise, they might be planting a very unsustainable seed of discord in that country. Yeah, from my observation. Yeah. And it is a general. When I say my observation, I mean the general observation of how I saw things.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, then, what is the best formula for them moving forward? Because let's not forget, people have died in the last couple of days. There are people still in prison. There are parties that feel like they weren't given enough, they were not given the opportunity to represent people as far as the elections were concerned. So how do they move on from that?
From where I sit, I think unconditional release of all political detainees so far. Unconditional. Release them. Then allow parties to participate in the elections, even for the presidential seat, irrespective of what those parties are saying. I think that would be good. allow the INEC, it is called INEC there, allow the INEC to be as independent. I'm happy, and I have to comment that during this election they brought some electoral reforms. Previously it was NEC, the National Election Commission, but now at least they have brought a factor of independence. So, and to my best of observation, they really tried. The INEC really tried to show its independence. So for me, I think because every democracy, even in Kenya and even in US, it's work in progress. So I think they should strengthen INEC, make sure there is pluralism of political participation of all political parties and individuals. Be accommodative. Like I found City Muga said here, if they actually allowed every political party to participate, CCM would have still won the election, from how I saw things on the ground. So sometimes these worries and anxiety, it can bring a nation that would have otherwise been strong and united and down. So I think the best thing is look at things from a larger picture. A political competition is a one-day event, but you still have 5 more years of people to live. And then the other about the
statement by the
issues of the people who we are saying are victims of the election, post-election. In terms of their lives and what have you, and properties also, because I also saw properties being destroyed. I think it is good that a country that has not had such a thing, sometimes Kenya, we have normalized some of these things. In such a country where things are not normal, in fact, nikibebo na taxis, and the places that I was saying, let me not specifically mention them for purposes of their security. This is a new thing for them. So rather than having strong statements, I think the best approach is where it doesn't cost anything to say sorry. I mean, I've never understood why leaders don't say sorry, even in the country, here in our country. It doesn't cost anything. Sometimes it's good, the victims and any other person who has been affected by the situation, to have that closure, and you show empathy to them.
It's not the leadership aspect, it's the paternalistic attitude that we carry into positions of authority. So it is then heightened, where by virtue of your position you think you're right, simply because you have authority, you have position, and you dare anyone who would question you. It's like the jailing. The jailing, it is not that they did not understand that they could win. It's how dare this, it's a mentality that African leaders have. How dare this person have a contrary opinion to mine? So we will teach you a lesson. That process of teaching you a lesson, we jail you, we beat you, we harass you. It's something that we see panning out. We see it in Uganda. Here we've seen it for the longest time, in the days of KANU. We have seen the tear gas. This tear gas thing is crazy. Somebody is being buried, you have a funeral. Tear gas. You're wondering, hey, what is this tear gas for? And even before you've understood it, 32 people have been shot. You're saying, this was a funeral, for heaven's sake. What on earth is happening with these people of ours? So these crazy things happen, and you have to understand the craziness from a Kenyan perspective and the lenses that we wear when we look at these things. And what you're spot on about, and you and I are in agreement, Tanzania has never seen this before.
Actually, to buttress your point, I was in Tanzania myself a couple of days before the elections, and I made very interesting observations.
Can we hold those observations for the news?
No.
Yes.
Of course, I'm kidding. Yes, I made some observations in Tanzania, and it was very interesting. And if you want to understand the political environment of any country, then you speak with cab drivers, and then you go to the local bar for a drink.
Right.
And there were essentially 2 conversations. There was a group which was saying Tunatiki, meaning they're going to vote for President Suluhu Hassan and CCM, that they are going to participate in an election. Then there was another election which was saying Tutatokea ama Tunatokea. Then the ones who said they were not going to participate in the election. But the environment before the election and after the election is polar opposites. Like, for instance, the entire Tanzania was awash with CCM electro paraphernalia. Posters all over, billboards all over, and some were just placed by the main road on your way to the airports. The major roads within Tanzania. And one would observe high levels of discipline. There are posters placed by the road.
Yeah.
Nobody would deface it. I mean, and even people are saying, if this was Kenya, then people would have defaced them.
Here we deface
and everything
if
else.
we don't like you, we tunairarua, tunachora vitu, we give you devilish horns.
Lakini hapo unapata posta ya Mama Suluhu Hassan imewekwa kwa barabara, busy highway, na kuna mtu amepigia msumari, and it's very clean, it's not dusty.
Yep.
So some Kenyans were asking, hapa kunaendaje? And nobody can even lift the poster. Then we said these are very high levels of discipline.
Yeah.
But nobody knew that a few days later, everything would turn upside down. But I'd like to take a departure from what Maina has said about moving forward. In my view, you can only move forward after you accept the prevailing environment and the situation, so that you do not repeat mistakes. Because if you move forward without accepting the obtaining environment, then there's a risk of getting in danger. And one would assume that the TZ authorities, having gone through this electoral process with some bumps and some shocks, they will invite everybody to the table, citizens, partners and stakeholders, to assess what were the challenges with this election and what must they do to ensure that these challenges do not recur, that these challenges do not stain their reputation. Because for the longest time, Tanzania is known to be, cool waters, very, very calm. So they need to have these kind of conversations and make sure that they do not get into this trouble again. Because if they do, then it may be normalized. It can easily become a best practice, and it's not in the interest of Tanzania or the East African Community member states for there to be this kind of turbulence in any EAC member state.
But this is not the first time, Mheshimiwa, and this one I'll direct it to you. This is not the first time we're seeing leaders in opposition from countries from all over Africa being either arrested or last minute disappeared or something of the sort. In the previous past, we've even had leaders who are assassinated because the incumbent probably feels that this person should not get to the very ballot. What do you think is plaguing the continent as far as our elections are concerned? Because many countries, after elections, kuna kwanga na shida. Hapa Kenya, we usually have petitions. In other countries, we usually have maandamanos. What do you think the issue is?
From my keen observation about elections in Africa, it's because we make elections a matter of life and death. 2, we have made the public service to be the only source of wealth creation in our socio-economic lives. If you go to what you'd call advanced countries, you'll find there are even companies that are more richer than the government itself. But you find here in Africa, the reason as to why politics is a cutthroat affair is because public service, that's the only place where you'll find individuals creating wealth, and it is what you would call illegal wealth. So that's why you find politics here is a matter of life and death. So if it means me getting these cities to jail Dismas, so be it. If it means Dismas winning this election is making sure Maina is unlived or is put into exile, so be it. So I think if we would open our countries to other spheres of economic, we open up the economic space where people now can compete fairly and compete fairly, actually. I think we would lessen the burden of our politics. But as far as my observation is concerned, the African democracies, we have made we have our own thinking of democracy.
Yeah.
So it's a cutthroat affair, and that's why if competition of power would mean injuring your opponent or your political rival, people would go to those extent. So I think some of these lessons we need to lessen our investments in politics and put more emphasis on economic development, so that competition now can be there. I would be so happy if we are competing over developing a certain area or developing a certain sector within our country, rather than competing as a matter of life and death for political seat.
Why do we have that particular mindset? Why do we treat our politics as a matter of life and death?
I think it's because we have not diversified our economies.
What do you mean?
I mean, you'll find if today somebody is elected to a position of leadership, particularly at the executive level, and City Muga, who is a local, is producing such cables or such
for the microphone,
such equipments for the microphone, and you're producing them for maybe say government or in the whole country, even in the private sector. And now me, I'm in the position of leadership. Now you come from China, or you come from another place, preferably outside Africa. You see, I'll put caveats. I'll make the provision of this material so difficult for City Muga, who is a local, because he has nothing to offer to me privately. And I'll make it easier for you, who will bring it, and you can give me something back. So we don't diversify our economy. So people will so much fight to now occupy that position of leadership so that they can
get that kickback.
Kick those kickbacks. So I think if we made our economic systems free and fair, people to compete, I think it would lessen so much interest in into politics. If you go to China, you know, I took my Kenyan culture there to now start intrigue discussion around politics.
Right.
People are not interested in those discussions there. In fact, they might report you if you start those kind of discussions. So they are what is preoccupying their debates, their day-to-day lives, are economic issues or social issues. But here, you can barely have a conversation even with our own girlfriends. You can barely have a conversation of more than 30 minutes without mentioning a political topic. That's the kind of...
Mokua, you look like you have an opinion on that.
Yeah, and it's simply because for some reason Kenyans decide to celebrate politicians the way Maina has indicated. I mean, during the election of members, Kenyan members to EALA, the kind of lobbying which was taking place at the National Assembly was high octane. You would even wonder what is happening at EALA. I mean, if he confesses, the people were moving in. People were moving, political party leaders were taking decisions, and decisions were being cancelled. People were being told to step down, people were being told to step up. So, I mean, it was high octane. But the challenge we have with African presidents and African political leaders is their insatiable affinity for status quo. Like you recall when we were championing for the new 2010 constitution, everybody said, we must go and we must have a new constitution. That this constitution we have is a bad document and we need to change. But as soon as Moi left, it's the late Honorable John Mishuki who said, wait a minute, we were just saying all this so that Moi leaves. This is actually a good document. And you recall that President Kibaki ran Kenya with the old constitution very well. So it's simply because majority of politicians want to engage in state capture. When they don't have power, they'll say every document coming out of State House today is a horrible thing. Whatever President Ruto says today, the opposition will dismiss it. Not because of its merits, but because of their personality. But as soon as they assume office, then it becomes an entirely different ballgame. That is why you talk about state capture. You go to South Africa, and the decisions said to have been made by President Zuma, they did not reflect the interests or aspirations of the populace, but rather they reflected the interests and aspirations of some elite. It's some sort of elite decision making that we are going to use power as a factor of production. That is why we are told that the richest guys in Kenya, or wealthy guys, all of them are either in the public sector or they are connected to the public sector. That is where all the millionaires or billionaires are domiciled. And as you said times above number, today you have a gentleman or a lady who cannot afford a cup of tea at a 5-star hotel. Today, 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years after assuming office, they'll buy a 5-star hotel, and they've not harnessed the factors of production. So how did this happen? That is number one. Number two, there are a number of African leaders who have assumed office through, popular elections, or maybe they were guerrillas. But as soon as they get into office, they step on many toes, and there's a phobia that if I leave office, what is going to happen with me? That if I do 2 terms. So most of them do not have the energy like of the Tanzanian president, the late Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, that have been the head of state, have taken some decisions which have not necessarily been a success. Can I move so that another person takes over? That was rare for President Nyerere to accept that I've taken some decisions which may not sit very well with the entire nation. So let me step aside and allow somebody else to come in. And that's how you get President Mwinyi coming in. And then they start reversing some of the policy decisions that is taken. But now, majority of African presidents wanaogopa kwenda nyumbani, because they say the kind of torture they've been visiting on the opposition leaders and other politicians, if they leave office, what is going to happen to them?
Revenge.
Yeah, revenge. And that's where Kenya is a shining example in the region. That after President Kenyatta, after President Moi getting the new constitution, and you've been told that it's going to be 10 years.
Yeah. Please
do your 2 terms of 10 years and take a break. Nobody's going to place you behind bars. And it's the same situation obtaining in Tanzania today. You've got Jakaya Kikwete. In fact, Tanzania scores an A. Now they treat their retired leaders.
Right.
At every function, the former presidents, former prime ministers, former
vice
presidents, whether it's in mainland Tanzania or Zanzibar, they're treated with very high levels of respect, and they are recognized. And then I think also African leaders must now develop this appetite of knowing that the fact that you've won an election, whether as an MCA or as a president, does not make you Albert Einstein, does not make you the sharpest tool in the shade, that in your absence, the nation is going to collapse. You remember at some stage, people are saying that, wait a minute, President Moi should be around for much longer. Because what happens if he leaves State House? The nation is going to collapse. But people said, no. Kenya is a going concern. President Moi left, Kibaki took over, Kibaki left, Kenyatta took over, Kenyatta left, Ruto is in charge, Ruto is going to leave, another person is going to take over, and the nation will keep on going. So leaders must realize that the fact that you've won an election, that you've convinced people to vote for you, does not necessarily mean that now you are the sharpest tool, you are Albert Einstein, and in your absence, the nation is going to collapse. I mean, it's Barack Obama who told us that you could be the sharpest, but there's somebody sharper than you. There's another person who is going to take over from where you've left. Even Omolo Kijana said that I think a good idea, a good idea can even get better. So it's important for people to realize that. And then finally, it's about our party democracies. We are with the unfortunate situation in Kenya that political parties are really special purpose vehicles created by powerful politicians, and which tends to be the case across African continents. And because these people, they own these assets, it's their special purpose vehicle. There is nobody who will stand up to challenge them. And that is why the political parties, while they're losing their popularity, like ANC is very strong, they've got a structured way of identifying their party leader. Yeah. And it's cast in iron that this is how it's going to happen. Even for CCM, it's cast in iron. That is how it's going to happen. How one wishes that President Moi left KANU a very solid party that today we would actually be discussing KANU alongside ANC and alongside CCM, so that you have that internal party democracy. And in my view, that is what is missing in most parts of Africa.
But Dismas, if you look at someone like the late President Moi and the period in which he cut his teeth in politics in Lejiko, what pertained then, and then if you look at leaders of his ilk within the continent, that man was way ahead of his time. When other leaders were threatening to die on the job, he was saying, okay, let me let air get into it. Let multipartism come in. You want to try this? Let's. And the culmination of this is his 2 terms ended and he left. It was good. You see, what pertains to the culture we have, and it's not just in politics, it's in our daily lives and in our development, maintenance and follow through. Kenyatta left KANU. Moi actually improved on KANU because he brought very many other people in. The next lot of people were now supposed to make sure that this party was something else. They did not. Okay? We are now looking at ODM and we wonder how it's going to work without Raila. It's going to be interesting to observe. But look at what it is that we do with institutions that have existed and served well, and how we neglect them because other interests come in, and it's only later we say, oh my goodness, we should not have let this one go. Because look at institutions like ICDC, KIE, Agricultural Development Corporation, Agricultural Finance Corporation. These are institutions that were set up specifically to help us grow the nation. And they did begin that process.
Especially ICDC.
Yes. But then, what then did we see? The element of continuity that was supposed to happen, somehow they just neglected. Other people came and cannibalized it and did all sorts of strange things. Things that we had begun, and we set us on this path that we keep talking about. And Mheshimiwa, I think when you talk about how it is, we seem to think that the place where one can actually acquire wealth is in government. Blame aside, are we saying that even as we observe from our own citizenry and their business acumen and their capacity to work, that it has never been understood that if you grow the wealth of the country, then everybody gets wealthy? That if the wealth of the country is great, then even those who are wealthy will be wealthier. Has it never hit us? Because we seem to understand that you get wealthy by taking from the source. So essentially you're saying is you want to kill it.
Before Maina comes in, I remember very well because I saw the event live. When everybody within KANU had told President Moi, Section 2A,
Pana,
we are not going to amend it. These are foreigners, adui wa maendeleo, who want to cause political instability
how old were
in
you
Kenya.
then, Dismas?
I don't want to disclose my age because my documents are not very elaborate. Anyway, I'm kidding. So, President Moi walks in. It looks at the audience gathered at
It was Kasarani.
Then it used to be referred by JJ Kamotha as Kisirani. And he says, as a political party, you've taken a decision to amend Section 2A. Section 2A is what made Kenya a single party state. Now, the audience, their jaws literally dropped to the ground because people had prepared
for 2 seconds.
Yeah, people had prepared speeches to say, Moi, that you are the king.
Kangumu.
Yeah, you are the solid guy. Don't succumb to this pressure. But Moi said,
Guys,
we are going to amend Section 2A. Now, the court poets or court jesters were caught with their pants down. They didn't know what to do for another moment.
it was 2 seconds, and then they shouted.
Yeah, and of course, that shows, that demonstrated Moi's leadership. But unknown to them, Moi had put together a plan in place that after doing his 14 years under those circumstances, still he was going to run and be president for 10 years. And this is what City says, that Moi was ahead of his time. Then I also remember another event at Nairobi Serena Hotel when Uhuru Kenyatta was conceding. At that stage, people had said, wait a minute, the head of state is called President Moi. You guys, you want to concede. But President Moi told them, you guys have run in an election, and you've lost. Can you go and concede? So a speech was put quickly together, and then having been walloped, beaten into a pulp, Kenyatta came and gave a concession speech, which was a very rare occurrence because people said, wait, President Moi has been in office for 24 years. How can you guys lose an election?
And that was the last time we ever saw such a thing.
Then around the same time, when President Kibaki was being sworn into office, the environment in Nairobi was so poisoned. I mean, depending on how you look at it.
Yep.
When President Moi on his way to Uhuru Park, because again I witnessed the event, you would actually touch the event, you would feel the transition.
It was palpable.
Yeah. Then some folks crawled from the woodworks, wakaanza kutupia Moi matope. They did not even acknowledge that if Moi would have decided to say that I'm not handing over power, he would have done it. Because you see, having been president for 24 years, you've actually created a system which is loyal to you.
Yeah.
Everybody serving then is loyal to you. And at that stage, President Kibaki was in a wheelchair. But President Moi again demonstrated leadership by going to KICC, to Uhuru Park.
Kibaki's speech was not gracious.
Yes.
It was not gracious. For someone who was having power handed to him, it was not a gracious speech. No, it was not.
And President Moi sat there, he listened. You would not even read his body language that he's furious, but he just sat there. After President Kibaki assumed office, he went back to State House, and when he was getting into one of those choppers, now some public servants of rank, if you can remember, and you can Google this footage, including Sani Kosgei, then head of the civil service, were literally crying. I mean, they did not understand. Wait a minute. This State House has been our home for 24 years.
They knew every corner.
Yeah, and now the president is leaving. But again, credit to our military, the way he took off from State House Nairobi, and when he landed at his residence, the military gave him his honors, and people said, this is the kind of transition we need. And I think after now, Moi setting that example, other presidents became comfortable. Because, when President Kibaki took office, people were doing press-ups, waiting for Kibaki to give President Moi a beating. People were having energy drinks, wanaulizana, hey, hiki tutakuwa lini? And I recall Mr. Kreitu Murungi, then a key member of President Kibaki's kitchen cabinet, they even wanted to start antagonizing the president, saying, now go back to the village, take care of your cows, we are going to teach you how to run the nation. There's even, I think, the property that President Moi had somewhere in Kibera. They even wanted to repossess it.
That was not his property. Yeah. That was the official residence of the vice president. And it is Kibaki who ensured that it now belonged to Moi.
Cabernet Gardens.
Yes. Kibaki is the one who said, Apana, hiyo ikae ni yake.
Yeah. Yes. But you see, now that is how Kibaki acted with grace. By showing now I'm president, if I want to give you a beating, I've got all the powers in the world. If I want to visit, I can make your life a bit of a
makesi.
Zote. But he said no. This gentleman, treat him with his respect.
So you're saying that President Kibaki was merciful?
Not merciful. In my view, he just did what a head of state is expected to do. Because you see, what does it serve you? You start harassing president,
our next president.
And then when you leave office, the person who takes over can also start harassing you. So it's going to be becoming like a cycle, and when will it stop? Now, that is one of the challenges facing majority of the leaders in Africa, the fear of the unknown. I mean, you remember Robert Mugabe. The reason why he feared leaving office is he had terrorized everybody, antagonized everybody, and he had no idea how life post-presidency would be. That is why they say, I'd rather die in office. I mean, if you go across West Africa, there's a country called Cameroon. The president has just won an election, and they even jokes around town that he has no idea that he was running for office, and he has no idea that he has won an election, and I don't know whether he's been sworn in. So it's the fear of unknown which makes majority of leaders not want to leave office.
The transition, like with the many things that happen, there are things that you will never know of. You'll hear whispers of, somebody will tell you, but then there are negotiations that take place behind the scenes. Because when you have a government that has been in place for 24 years, in those times, that government has offended very many people. And the people will want revenge. Okay? That has to be negotiated. There are those who will claim this particular government pilfered. That has to be talked about. Because everyone, let them return everything they took. There has to be guarantees that this is what will happen, this is what will happen. And we thank Kibaki for that. When I say he was a practical president, he was.
Perhaps like you're saying, maybe there were those behind the scenes negotiations whereby ilisemekana cheki, wewe ukienda home, trust me, hatuta kusumbua, weende utulie.
Actually, there are foreign countries that had wanted reparations. Kibaki said no. He said, in this country, we'll be creating a problem that is going to follow us on throughout
Generations.
You forgive, you move on. It happened, yes, leave it, let's go on. Now you see, we have developed a culture, and as you see it, Kibaki opened up the spaces that we are now enjoying. It is his presidency. Moi kicked it off. He flagged it off and said 20. The actual opening up, and to understand it, remember Ridiculous? There was this group called Ridiculous. They used to make fun of Moi. Tell me on this continent where you as a bars, you as a bunch of comedians could make fun of any president. You die, chief. Moi really set us on that path.
That's why it was called Ridiculous.
Yes. Now, Kibaki opened it up even more. Because it's in the Kibaki era that we started seeing things that we had never seen before. One, we actually saw ministries working and doing what they're supposed to do. Because you didn't see Kibaki. You didn't hear Kibaki. The previous government we heard saw Moi almost every single day. This one you didn't. The buck stopped to those people who are in charge. We have a culture, and our culture goes along with our culture for criticizing everything under the sun. To the point where we don't even appreciate that these things we refer to as the handshake are an excellent culture that we've created. You have a political problem, you shake hands. Other places, people go to the bush and a war begins. 8 years down the line, when you are asking, what were we fighting about again? By that time, the country is in shambles.
I mean, look at what is happening in southern Sudan.
Not Sudan.
No, actually, both Sudans. Yeah, both Sudans. Because you've got a few powerful generals, about 10.
Yeah.
Very powerful generals whose word is as good as law. But because they've refused to have a conversation over a cup of tea, a round table conversation, the country is in a crisis. And more often than not, it just takes what you City saying, handshake or dialogue to cure all these things.
Yeah.
Because if you go to Sudan, those two generals were working together under Bashir.
Yeah.
Yes, under Bashir, who himself was a military man.
Yeah.
You must not forget that.
Yeah, military man, yeah.
Yes.
So what stops them from having a cup of Kenyan coffee or Kenyan tea in a round table and ironing out their issues? But it appears they've got a mutual contempt for each other that they cannot afford to sit on a table. There's a bit of ego. Now, we are told when Kibaki was the president, the cabinet was very effective. There is actually cabinet ministers who took decisions. That Kibaki had no time for even side meetings, and even if you wanted to have a conversation with him, it must have been an issue that wouldn't wait for another cabinet meeting. And then the head of the civil service must attend the meeting. So the idea of discussing state matters in a Mpangwa Kando like of thing, under a mango tree, never ever happened. And I also understand, because I've had the opportunity of relating with a few permanent secretaries and cabinet ministers who worked under President Kibaki, that when you go to his office with a nice idea and he accepts it and the minutes are taken, he will ask you to leave his office to go and implement the idea, because the idea is so good it can't wait. But if you go there, you are discussing a certain idea and then he offers you a cup of tea and mandazi, no, you've been wasting his time.
Your time ilikuwa useless.
Yeah, so he said, because you came to my office to waste time, okay, please enjoy a cup of tea and have a mandazi. Ukimaliza ongeza ingine and have a mandazi. So people actually learn that if you go to State House, your meeting lasts for 2 minutes and the president tells you leave, you've excited him, that is a very good idea. But if he's offered you a cup of tea and mandazi, then prepare to be fired.
Mheshimiwa Maina, prepare to be fired. this concept of democracy that we are having here in Africa, should we rethink perhaps how we run our affairs as Africa? Because I feel like democracy really wasn't really designed for this continent.
Oh.
when we look at the kind of problems we're facing.
For me, I think we, in my view, and this is where now Dismas comes in. I think it would be prudent if we engaged political thinkers around the psychology of the African person from a political perspective, the socio interests of the socio aspirations and economic aspirations of an African person, and then recommend or diagnose a political system. Because true to it, as you're saying, democracy is a very expensive affair for us. If you look at the cost of an election in Africa, it's too costly. Some of these resources that we spend to campaign, to actually for the IBC or the Electoral Commission to manage the elections, it's too costly. Last night I was having a conversation with somebody, and I was saying that for you to have a chance, a fair chance, to run a presidential election in Kenya, to campaign for a presidential election in Kenya, you must have an upward of 40 billion.
At what?
To run a presidential campaign.
To have a fair chance. Yes.
Why?
Kenyan shillings.
Yeah,
Kenyan shillings.
but why 40 billion?
Exactly. That's what the movie is asking.
What are you going to do with the 40 billion?
Yes, for campaigns.
No.
To have a fair chance in this campaign.
No.
Have a fair chance in presidential campaigns in Kenya. 40 billion. Upwards.
And I think what Maina is saying approximates real figures, because number one, the costs of logistics moving from point A to point B. If you're running a presidential campaign, if you don't have access to at least 10 choppers, then don't even talk about a presidential campaign. And then the Kenyan politician, they expect to be given allowances, standing allowances, food allowances. There's no politician who will confess that they give these allowances, but there's a very heavy cost towards mobilization. Then also the cost of having your agents on election day across the nation, and you don't just return them on day one. The election is tomorrow, and then the day after Malindi. Now you must take them through a training process. You must have a political party that you are going to run, so it's very expensive. But however, on
then you must have candidates.
Yes,
that you have to finance.
Yeah, however, on the cost of IBC, I think for IBC there is some hidden thing there, because if you can transfer money on your mobile phone right now and it's safe and secure, why can't we get a technology? For me, I think the reason why our elections in Kenya are very expensive is because of cartels and vendor interest within IBC. Like, for instance, if you are a Kenyan and you've got an ID, again, where must you register as a voter? Can't we get a system whereby the government agencies can share this information? If you've got a mobile money app in Kenya, why can't you create a system where you can vote online? So part of the reason why IBC is very expensive is because of trust, the trust issues. In other parts of the world, voting day is not a public holiday. People go to work in the morning. Around 10 o'clock during their coffee break, they go cast their ballots and come back. An election in Kenya is almost a security operation. You have KWS, you have Kenya Prison, you have
Kenya Forest Service.
Everybody is there because of these trust things. And as Maina had indicated, if you run for an election and you lose, depending who has won, then you're going to be in the cold for the next 10 years. That is why you hear people saying, including ODM and others, 2027 tutakuwa ndani ya serikali ama will be part of the coalition, because they know when you are part of the administration, then you can use the power as a factor of production. In other parts of the world, like in the UK, if you're in the opposition, you are as good because you've got opportunities to influence policy making. But in Kenya, if you are not there, then it becomes a crisis. So even without looking at the psychology of the voter. You know, it's people who have assumed political office who start crafting a message like the one you are talking about, that we need to review whether or not democracy works in Africa. Every human being, when you get to the age of 16 or 18, depending on the jurisdiction, you've got a capacity to take a decision. So take a decision. So if you're in a kingdom or a monarchy, then you run with it. But if we have embraced democracy, that we must elect people into office, let's make it very competitive to elect people into office, and let's also make them appreciate the best practices, respecting term limits, respecting that if you're running for office, there's a probability of winning or losing. When you lose, accept that you've lost. But make sure that the political competition is free, so that everybody stands a fair chance. Because it's useless to go into a political competition when it's already rigged and you cannot stand a chance.
The reason I'm asking about democracy in Africa is because, number one, even here in Kenya, we still have politicians who believe that Raila was rigged out of several elections, right? So, his election was stolen, his win was stolen, and it's happening also in other countries. Then we have also countries where leaders have been in power for a very long time, and like I know we were joking about this, but it could be a reality whereby there's a president who was elected, he has absolutely no idea he was actually even in that election, in the ballot, and then we also have other examples we can pick out where presidents wanakatalia pale hivyo and they become presidential monarchs. So for that reason, and actually another point, when we look at even our own political parties and their structures, political parties are, number one, they belong to certain individuals. Kuna mtu alianzisha chama na yeye ndiye anadeciding whatever happens in that chama, so that chama becomes like a small kingdom where he decides whatever happens.
His word is law.
Exactly. So if there is no democracy in a political party, how do I honestly expect there to be democracy during elections and even after the elections?
Paul.
So when we take that into account, should we reconsider democracy? Yes, City.
Paul, political parties are not democratic institutions. The world
Exactly.
over, they are not.
Yes.
They are not.
So
Here, you talk of individuals who own them.
did you just
There-
say the world over?
Yes.
Yes, they are not. They are not democratic institutions. They are owned. That structure that you see there, iko na wenyewe. Let me put it in Kiswahili.
But there's a structure.
But even ours have structures.
But you see, let's take the American one, for example.
No, don't even go there. Look at the Democrats. Biden had won. Biden was the presidential candidate. But at some stage, a lady by the name Nancy Pelosi, former speaker, said, I don't like the way you handled that debate. We need to reconsider your position. There was a pressure. And before you would say movie, Kamala Harris was the
Running.
or is it Kamala? She was the
Presidential
candidate.
candidate,
So were members consulted? It's Biden who took a decision that I'm stepping out, and this is going to be my successor. And even so, understand within that party, it's an animal farm. They've got delegates, and then they've got super delegates. Yeah.
If you look at the American system, the way they elect, you can go and elect whoever you want. Then they have this collegiate system that will decide. Yes, it's like a pre-rigged election. You go and vote. You've got a popular
They have
vote.
the popular vote, and then they have the college votes.
Like the Bush one in
Yes.
2000.
Yes, and
Al
Gore.
yes. What I'm trying to tell you, but
Even the Trump one.
no, Trump versus Mrs. Clinton.
Yes.
Yes. What I'm trying to say is, remember, the people who wrote this constitution were rich farmers who owned slaves. Please don't ever forget that one. Please don't ever forget that. And those freedoms they were talking about were not freedoms for black people.
For slaves.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. They had a problem with England, who had exercised authority over them, and a king in England who was far away exercising authority. Please understand that. So when you talk about democracy, all these amendments that the American Constitution has had was because the purpose for which that Constitution served at the time it was enacted, with them they realized, we need to amend these things to make it what? Relevant. Okay? We have a path that we are following with our democracy. Would you say, for instance, the the Japanese have a democracy? They do. Would you say the South Koreans have a democracy? They do. Would you say the Pakistanis have a democracy? They do. Would you say the Indians have a democracy? They do. They are very different from the American, the Canadian, and the British democracies. But they're democracies.
Yeah, and one would actually come to the conclusion that parliamentary democracies tend to be more democratic than presidential democracies. And you remember even Kenya was supposed to be a parliamentary democracy, but again some powerful leaders, I think they were in Kilifi or in Naivasha, they decided let's go into a presidential way. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's why I recommended an objective and scientific study of the socio-psychology
of the African voter.
You know, I agree with you.
So that you recommend when you're building a political system, you are building it on what you have founded. And I like what Siti Muga said. The kind of democracy that is in the US has been founded on certain financial interests or economic systems, like the ones of slave trade, and they have transitioned now to international finance banking, all those things. So they have founded their own unique democracy.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we, even as Africans,
We need our own unique.
we need our own. It is called democracy. The general word is democracy, but we have our own unique way of producing leaders, so that we can have a system that produces leaders that fit within our socio-economic interests and aspirations. And economic politics will not be a matter of life and death. We will not spend a lot of money on these elections. What Dismas is saying about, and I was really pushing for that even before the elections of 2022.
Okay.
I've never understood why somebody who pays tax has to reconfirm himself or herself to exercise his political rights in terms of electing. Do you know how they have to confirm or deconfirm themselves? By registering as a voter. If we are talking of what you call a whole of government approach, because that is the approach, particularly the current administration is talking about, a whole of government approach. If we are talking of a whole of government approach, IEBC is a government institution. Kenya Bureau of Statistics is a government institution. The immigration guys are government institutions. Why can't all these institutions come together, ask, like for when they were doing the census, ask who are these people who you counted as above 18? Who are these people as immigration or other people you have issued IDs to? Share this data to IEBC. Those people register. Let those people vote, rather than exercising, putting a lot of money, like right now. Even as politicians are having difficulties, you go somewhere, like yesterday I was meeting some young people. I'm being told, please Mheshimiwa, facilitate us to go and register for as voters. And even this voting or this registration is at the constituency office, not at the grassroots. So somebody, if you want to register yourself as a voter, here is this is Dagoretti North, and the constituency office is in Kawangware. Sasa lazima utafute ofisi nini fair ya kwenda Kawangware.
They will not go.
They will not go.
And that is a politician who will give you fair.
Yes.
If we can register SHA *147#, and you register SHA and you go to hospital and you're treated, why can't I also, using what Mheshimiwa is saying here?
Early in the morning, what did I tell you about IBC? I told him very early in the morning, I don't want this discussion. I don't want to hear it, because they're telling us things. They are engaging in prophecies, okay? Oh, people will register large numbers. I said, what they need to be telling us is how they brought the registration closer to the people.
Yes.
That's the conversation I should be hearing. Anything else, I'm actually not interested in hearing.
Bring it on your mobile phone. And something else also to buttress what Maina has said about this African voter. I also think it's time for I think they refer to as the middle class in Kenya, or the professionals, to develop deliberate interest in party primaries. Well, again, the party owners have got the yam and the knife, but still, majority of people have no idea. Majority of the Kenyan voters don't know what a party primary is. So they wait for ODM to give them a list, or for UDA to give them a list, and then you go to the ballots, falsely believing that you are going to exercise choice.
Dismas, allow me. What represents a party primary in Kenya is when parties go through their nominations and they decide who. I'm wording it carefully. Okay? When they have what we call their party nominations, so that whoever is going to vie for that seat is determined. But they have constitutions that allow them to give people direct nomination.
Yes.
You see? So you wonder, why then do you have this process? Why don't you just give everybody direct nomination? So,
but do you know why that happens?
yes.
In part, party primaries are used for fundraising. Like, for instance, if using an example, if say Langata is an ODM stronghold,
Is it fundraising or is it extortion?
it's fundraising. But again, I've seen a number of professional groups coming up. Like, for instance, from Kisii and Kuria, there's a gentleman called Sam Nyamweya, who is the chair of the professionals group. And what they want to do is they want to ensure that only people with capacity, character, and competence run for these seats. So they want to ensure that professionals actually come up and identify these people. You know, sometimes you have...
You're infringing on people's rights. He's infringing on people's basic rights.
How so?
Who is he to set the standard to say that we only want... Who's going to do... and who? Everything that he says should be decided. Who determines this? The point he's trying to make, I understand that it actually makes sense. I'm being facetious. But the point I'm trying to make is this. We're actually missing the point. This is running around in circles. We have not accepted as a people, as Africans, that even if you vote someone, that person is your servant, not your boss. How can we have people who work for us in our homes and elsewhere. They don't give us instructions. We give them instructions. They offer an opinion and we accept it. Here you give someone a job and then this is the person you keep running to. You keep... Until, this is my view, we learn to hold leaders to account. These young people we keep referring to as Gen Zs are doing it very well. They've understood it better than we have. We don't hold our leaders to account. It doesn't matter whether that person is educated. This is the most educated parliament we've ever had. And they're by far the most useless parliament we've ever had in this nation. By far.
And you know, one would say the same about governors. You know, we insisted that to be a governor, you need to have a bachelor's degree. Because we were, hoping that you're going to have some outcomes. But I look at the Auditor General, all the accountability institutions, every single day they point to issues around governance within the county governments.
Yep.
So, but for me, I think, the professional groups, they need to come up and at least try to sieve people from the basic level. Because you said that there are some people, every person knows in the village that huyu hata huwezi wacha ng'ombe yako kwake ukienda kwa safari, because when you will come you will probably enjoy your cow's meat at the local butchery. But these are the same people you give political office. So why can't we have these professionals coming up all over Nairobi to work with political parties? Because we are told that we may have zero interest in politics. But politicians and politics will develop interest in you.
Dismas, you are a very intelligent fellow who understands this country better than even I do. What are you talking about? People coalesce around politicians because they're expecting to get something back. That is what happens. Even the discussion about the amounts of money, I find it repugnant for a very simple reason. Without meaning to, we are actually encouraging this entire culture we've developed over time of money. We can make a statement and say this is what is done. Why do you need so much money to actually demonstrate that you are able to give the people what they need, not even want? And we speak about this and we accept it. That is where the problem begins. Why are we accepting it? Why do we accept that a presidential election must be 40 billion? Why do we accept that when somebody wants to be an MCA, you must have, God knows, 10, 20... For heaven's sake, why do we accept all these things?
And also, Maina pointed to a very disturbing fact. Right now, during voter registration, people who want to run for offices are actually the ones who mobilize folks to go and register in particular electoral areas. So, you want to run in constituency A, but in fact, you get people from constituency B to to come and register in constituency A. And in the process, you have to give them a number of allowances. And then also on the voting day, you also have to go and transport them so that they can go and
wachukulie pikipiki tuk waende
wakapigie kura. Now, doing all that kind of mobilization is a cost. So the politicians say they've got an incentive to go and recover that amount of money they've used for mobilization
once they get this power,
once they get into office, because they said that this is an investment, and it's now been demonstrated that politics in Kenya has got a superior return on investments. That is why some of the sharpest people in Kenya are politicians.
Yeah, sometimes it gives you even up to 1,000,000% return on investment. Yeah, because suddenly you got in there, you were nothing. Suddenly, 2 years into office, you're a billionaire.
Paul, don't you see this as a problem? I mean, we are discussing it as though this is a norm we should continue accepting.
No, we shouldn't.
And this is the bane of our existence.
It shouldn't. We shouldn't accept it.
Because somebody is well-meaning, they get into parliament, but he looks around. I mean, he's the only person who seems to have this view.
Yeah.
Now, he may not engage in whatever these people are engaging in, but he is already stifled and can barely move.
You recall a gentleman called Mutava Musimi, Reverend Mutava Musimi, when he was the Secretary General of NCCK. He was a very solid person, participated in the constitutional reform process. And when he went to the National Assembly, people said, wow, this is the kind of leadership that we need. But understand, you've got all these bright ideas. When you land at the National Assembly or even EALA, you discover that the National Assembly ikona wenyewe who are not members of the National Assembly. You land at the Senate, you discover the Senate ikona wenyewe who are not senators, and you immediately get into that system, and before you can say your second name, it's elections time, and you need resources for your campaign.
Yeah. Mheshimiwa, have the last word on this one. That democracy you spoke of, unaona ikikaa namna gani?
In terms of my observation, and for me, in terms of Kenyan democracy, and I will build from where Mokua is saying. And I think what Mokua is saying is something that I have been saying all over in these stations, and I always even discuss in private. Kenyan leaders are not decided in August of any election here. They are decided on the nomination of the political parties.
Yeah.
And that's why, like right now, I don't know whether you have followed, in the major discussion, political discussion in my region, that is Mount Kenya region, is the kind of quality of leaders that we send in the...
Rigija said all of you must be lawyers.
In the National Assembly and in the Senate. We leave, and sorry to say so, we leave the party nomination to people who don't go, or to people who are jobless, or people who are not doing something on in their lives, to decide who becomes the MP candidate, the governor candidate,
Senator,
the Senate candidate,
women rep,
MCA. The MCA. For us to choose now, to now confirm that person in August. Why? What am I trying to say? The political parties in Kenya, they always set up their party nominations on a weekday.
Sasa mimi na tuko kazini.
Wakati mimi na tuko kazini. When we are having this show, ama wakati uko kazini, that's when they are setting up the party nominations. So, who now do you expect to go and turn up and vote?
Okay. You have a point, Mheshimiwa.
The person who turns up to vote during the nomination is somebody who can easily be influenced by a packet of unga.
Yes.
So, if and that's why you are finding there are people like right now. I was telling somebody yesterday, me don't expect me to be subjected to a party nomination anywhere. I will not. Hiyo nimekataa. Let me be subjected
to the election where everyone, the poor, the rich, the middle class will come and vote.
But if you subject me to an electoral process that the people who are going to vote can be influenced with the 200 shillings. My friend, I will not be subjected to that kind of nonsense.
Right.
So, and that is the kind of discussion, and we need to speak to our democracy. And we need to speak to the people who are, what City Munga is saying, the owners of these political parties. Do your nominations on a weekend where we have a chance of the middle class standing up. But don't subject leaders or political aspirants to an exercise where people who have been exposed in terms of education, in terms of life, business, cannot have a fair chance to go and elect.
All right.
Yeah. Before we leave, allow me to make a radical proposal.
Yes.
Maybe we should have a day when we do all our party nominations, declared a public holiday, because even over the weekend or Saturday or Sunday, people will say we are going to church, others will say we are going to have a drink, we are going to watch Manu, or you are going for pedicure and manicure, those kind of things, and they don't show up. So maybe there is merit in having a national day during that day.
I actually agree. I agree. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We've come to the end of the show.